welcome to Ramona Ranch Winery. We're super excited to partner with the university and talk about sustainability. It's something that's been important to us really since growing up on the Oregon coast. It was something that was practiced a lot up there. They didn't necessarily have a term for it, but it was about taking care of your land. I grew up on a very small farm. My dad was a commercial fisherman. Mike's dad was a logger. So it really is about taking care of the environment. If you're in those type of careers, if you don't take care of the land doesn't take care of you. So when you're multi-generational farmers, loggers, commercial fishermen, it really is taking care of the land. So when we moved to Ramona, I knew I wanted a horse and I wanted to grow pumpkins. and Mike wanted to work on cars. So we settled into Ramona and we found that we had moved here right at the time that the AVA was going in. So there was grapes being planted, and Ramona was working on its American Viticulture Designation, AVA, which is a big deal in the wine world. So we were super excited to get involved and just start making wine for fun. So we planted a little vineyard that's now gone, and then just started making wine and getting involved with the Ramona Valley Vineyard Association. So a lot of folks here are members of the RVVA, and it's a great way to get educated. It's very much a community. We drink each other's wine, we share equipment, we pick together. If you're not a member and you're interested in learning about wine, it's not specific to Ramona. We do bring speakers in. Last month, can't remember who we had last month. Alicia, thank you, on vineyard care. The month before was on the influence of oak on wine. So just different kinds of fun things. But we'll kind of start with, so how many people here grow grapes? Awesome, a lot of you. Thank you. So our upper vineyard is Tannat. So couple of things really important when you talk about sustainability is making sure you start with good grapevines. So grapevines should be certified clean. So Tannat's a fairly new varietal to the United States. It was actually a French varietal that ended up doing very well in Uruguay, and Topless Creek sponsored it to come into the United States back in 2005, I think. And when they sponsor a vine, so somebody has to actually be the money behind it, and they brought it into UC Davis, brought cuttings in, and then Davis will grow it for about a year to make sure it's clean and doesn't introduce any bugs into America. So Davis does it for the West Coast, Cornell does it for the East Coast. So really important that if you do vineyard stuff, you actually use certified rootstock. So Mike, do you want to explain the rootstock, the scion, and
what little I know about it?
Yeah.
So when you plant a rootstock, the rootstock is generally going to be from the United States. The rootstock in the United States is resistant to the bugs in the soil, phylloxera, nematodes, that kind of stuff. You're going to graft a European vine onto that rootstock. European vines are self-pollinating. American vines are not. They need a male and a female. So the benefit is you get the resistance from the bugs, and then you get the benefit of the European scion, is what they call it.
Cool. Yeah. So if we look at our vineyard, so we're certified sustainable. As far as I know, we're still the only ones in San Diego County. I think there's 2 in Temecula. I haven't checked in a while. We just passed our year 5, but being certified sustainable, you start out with, there are things you have to do, like you can't use Roundup. There's definitely a pesticide list of things you can and can't do, but then there's also a big opportunity to learn and grow. So our watering system, when we started out, we were watering traditional water. So we watered, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, whether the vines needed it or not. And that was okay in year 1. But then part of our action plan was, well, you need to learn to water based on what the plant needs. So year 2, it was, okay, Mike's going to walk the vineyard and look and see, what do the tendrils look like? Maybe we're just going to water on Fridays because the vine doesn't really need to be watered Mondays and Wednesdays. So that was okay for year 2. Year 3, it was, well, how are you going to control the runoff in the vineyard? So when we walk down this vineyard, you'll see we actually have silt ponds, we have caption basins. Right back in here, It's designed so that it doesn't run out and put silt in. So there's a lot of different things that we did with the National Resource Conservation District to stop water from running off this property and instead retain it on the property. So that was okay for year 3. Year 4, they actually wanted us to measure the plant's water needs. So you're better at explaining that system than I am.
Yeah, we bought a system called Vinduino, and it has sensors in the vineyards. Lets us know what the soil water tension is in the soil at 3 different depths: 2 feet, 3 feet, and 4 feet. So we can water to 4-foot depth and see the level of saturation in the soil, and adjust our watering schedule based on that. And it also calculates evapotranspiration for us, which is the uptake of the water through the vine and evaporation out of the leaves. So it helps us not underwater the vines so much, or overwater them. It gets the best potential of water to the grapevine.
Yeah, and if you're growing grapes, you've heard it's good to water stress them. Well, what we've learned is that that's really not true in Ramona. It might be true, in Napa or somewhere that has a good amount of water. But what we've learned is we don't want to stress the grapes, because we want our plants to be healthy. We want our grapes to be producing well. So, any comments on that?
Yeah, water stress is a huge point of contention around here. Traditionally, they used to turn their water off, the growers, July 1. They just completely turn the water off. Well, what would happen is the grapes would actually just dehydrate and not ripen. They'd have real high sugar, but they'd also have real high acid, and the pH would be really off. So we brought in some specialized speakers that did trials on doing water stress at different levels. And basically what they showed was you do get a pretty good quality wine out of a stressed vine, but you sacrifice so much yield that it's not even worth it. So we water all the way up until the day we harvest. Never shut the water off. Just monitor, make sure that we're giving it the right amount of water. And we do about 75% of what the vine actually needs, which is what we learned in the class, was the best way to water the vines.
Yeah. So you'll also see.
Bomb?
I haven't done a pressure bomb. They're $2,000, so
3.
for 3 now. Yeah, but we just, you can kind of look at the vines and see what they need, and being that we have drought-tolerant rootstock, if you underwater the vine a little bit, you can actually just put more water in the soil. They'll recover. They'll come back. They'll start growing tendrils again and stuff. So just kind of monitor all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are your water tensioners?
They're actually up one of these rows right in the middle of this vineyard, and we can find them. They're right down here somewhere.
How many do you have?
Just 2. We have 1 in each of these vineyards. Actually 3. We have 1 in the orchard as well, just because we're trying to monitor water in the orchard for the trees. And they're wireless to the house, and they go to a program, and you can look and see real time and go back and see, how
and it'll graph
dries
it.
out.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool system.
And it'll even calculate your spray for mildew. It'll give you your powdery mildew index and tell you when you absolutely have to spray for powdery mildew and everything. It's a pretty cool program.
Yeah.
It's a little labor intensive, but still.
Before we walk anymore, that's a great segue. So another part of being sustainable, I like to use the examples of traditional farming. Sorry, my back's to you.
No, it's fine.
Okay, traditional farming versus sustainable farming. So again, traditional farmer, I put my hat on, I jump on my tractor. Every 14 days, I spray my vineyard. I don't care what's going on, spray my vineyard. So part of being sustainable is you look at the heat index. And again, it's UC Davis, and you actually measure the temperature of what happens, and they call it degree days. And so Mike tracks it, and we know if we've hit a certain temperature for so many days, we don't need to spray because the mold spores have already died. So if you continue to do this every 14-day spraying, all you're doing is really putting products that you probably don't want back in your water table. You're building up disease resistance, and you're putting yucky stuff in your wine. So high
And wasted money on fuel and product.
and time. I mean, he doesn't want to be out here every 14 days.
Right. Yeah.
So by using the index, we spray what?
Wear factor.
We sprayed 3 times this year, and we won't need to spray again unless it rains. The other vineyard that we harvested on Monday, I sprayed it twice. And I know other growers have sprayed their vineyards 5-6 times just because it's every 2 weeks. We sprayed it twice, and there's no mold on it. So.
Yeah, Donna, question? Oh, can you explain the index better than I just did?
I can't really explain it. It's complicated. But if you go on UC Davis PMI's Powdery Mildew Index, you can download the instructions on it. And basically, it's
It's a story problem.
Yeah, it's a story problem. Between 65 and 85 is the optimum temperature for powdery mildew to grow. If it drops below 65, you can deduct points. If it goes above 95, you can deduct points. If it's between 65 and 85, you add points. Once you hit 60 points, you have 7 days to spray. If any time in that 7 days it goes over 95 degrees for more than 8 hours, you go back to 0. It's a story problem. So,
UC just did a seminar online about 2 weeks ago on the powdery mildew. I think it's available
it's great.
for replay. You can
Okay. Yeah, so
It's so cool when you start to look at it.
if
It's
you
like
follow it, we have weather stations close to us that we can look at. We also have the water monitoring in the vineyard, and it measures air temperature and everything. So we can do the powdery mildew fairly easily, and it works great. So.
yeah. So the other thing, we practice here at Ramona Ranch, of course, is biodiversity. And so you'll see that we don't actually use cover crops. We don't use commercial cover crops in the vineyard. We use natives. We found that works really well. Frankly, when we started out, I spread a ton of crimson clover. Did my research. I'm like, crimson clover would be really cool here. Planted it. The only place it survived was in the grow tubes because it needed water, and that was the only place I didn't want it was in the grow tubes.
You make bunny food.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we've learned over time that it's really better to look to what the natives are in your area. We keep them mowed. They're not quite as pretty. I mean, I always say if you go through a vineyard and it's super super pretty and really it's really clean under the vines, clean as in there's nothing growing, there's a reason. Why?
Roundup.
Yeah.
Herbicide.
Either.
Yeah, they've sprayed herbicides and killed everything in that fruiting in that zone, and that's right where it goes into your plant's roots.
And your grapes.
And your grapes, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then into your tummy.
Yeah. So what we've learned over time is actually the natural mustard not only is a great cover crop because it's natural, so it likes our conditions, but it also has long roots that help break up the soil. So when we do get those weird little rainstorms like we got last week, it freaking poured here last Sunday. Poured. And because of those roots, they actually make tunnels into the ground, and the water stays and goes back into the soil and back into the water table. And we found that nematodes don't like the taste of mustard, so it keeps them away from your vines too, your vine roots.
Cool.
So,
Would you do a lot of weed whacking?
a lot of weed whacking.
Okay.
Weed whacking, mowing.
Mowing and weed whacking.
Yeah.
And a pulling.
Yeah. You'll see, we've got a little bit of non-natives that have spread in here. So we talked about water, we talked about pest management, powdery mildew, cover crops. I started to talk a little bit about biodiversity. One of the things I've learned is it really goes back to the more diverse your native plants are, the more diverse your bugs are. The more diverse your bugs are, the more diverse your birds are going to be. And so what we're striving for is balance. And so if I rely solely on non-natives, then I'm not going to have a non-native bird population. It may come and come to my bird feeder, but it's not going to raise its babies here because baby birds need bugs and moths and worms and stuff that grows on native plants. And so you're not going to get that if you have non-native plants. So we really try and keep a lot of natives around here. We also have an insectary, and we can I don't know how much we want to walk because I see them kind of setting up over there. But we have an insectary around. If you sit around the patio and you just kind of sit still and look, you'll see there's a ton of different birds. I'm sorry, a ton of different bugs on there. Lots of bees. You know, Mike mentioned earlier that grapes are self-pollinating, but we still need bees because we want our cover crops to thrive. We want our native weeds to thrive. So we need bees as pollinators to help with that. So we do a lot of classes here. We actually have one coming up complimentary on September 18th on bats and why you want bats, why we want bats around. So, and they're an excellent pollinator.
Do you get bees here?
We don't grow bees, but back in the 40s, this was a bee. They commercially grew bees here. So when we were cultivating, we would find old bee boxes. And if you sit still anywhere here, you'll start to see a ton of bees. Yeah, so we have lots of different kinds of bees. So.
That whole hillside's bee habitat, so there's
Yeah.
a lot of native bees here.
Totally.
Yes, and that's Lisa back there owns that over there. So she's got also the oak groves and.
Yeah, one thing that we did because we need the bees is we switched from using a neonicotinoid pesticide on the vines. Not because the bees pollinate the vines, but because that drip system drips on the plants below the vines and they pollinate those. And they've linked that product to colony collapse disorder. So we moved over to a bee-safe product called Savanto, and we don't use imidacloprid anymore.
And I think we're the only vineyard in Southern California that's not using imidacloprid. So, and we're going to work on getting bee safe certified, and that was the first thing they said was, "You're a vineyard, do you use imidacloprid?" And we're like, not anymore. So it's a learning process, and I think that's, the certification, when you look at certification, it can be daunting. The book's about this thick. I have a little slideshow I'll talk about. There's 16 different categories that we're evaluated on. But they don't expect you to be perfect to start. They expect you to be struggling or not know about areas and to learn. So it really is a learning process. So, okay, we talked bird netting. We can talk about bird netting a little bit if anybody's interested in that. We do side netting. So again, part of sustainability. There's different types of product, and this is a product that's guaranteed for 10 years. So it's one you're not going to have to replace over and over. It actually stays in the vineyard. So we've got side netting that comes up and drops down, and it's pretty small, so it hopefully keeps some of the bee damage down too. So questions?
I'm here for the free
Is that
wine.
mostly for bee or birds too?
That's
mostly
for
birds.
They call it bee netting because it's got little triangles, but I've seen a bee land on there and go boop. Right inside. So,
And a yellow
but it
jacket.
really, I mean, as long as you can keep the birds from damaging the vines, usually the bees don't come, and so that's part of it. Is just minimizing the damage to the grapes from the birds. That helps you and it keeps the mold and mildew and stuff out of the vineyard.
And
It
having
makes a really nice hammock for the squirrels. It just-
and having predatory birds.
Never
So-
had a snake in one. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to. So part of having a diverse system here, biodiversity, is we want to have a diverse amount of birds. So we've got a lot of bluebirds, we've got a lot of mockingbirds,
Mockingbird,
and those are both birds that really eat insects, not berries. But they consider this their home. This is where they're raising their babies. So we look to them to kind of scare the starlings away and chase the other birds off. So.
Yeah, we have doves. Doves don't eat grapes. We have those mountain
Robins.
bluebirds. They don't eat grapes. They eat,
We had a
they eat
nesting
black
pair of
widows and
robins
stuff.
down
Yeah.
here, which is really unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Patty said, we had a nesting pair of robins, unusual for the area. So we had a question, do we have a problem with wasps?
Yellow jacket.
Oh, yeah.
Last year was really bad. Yeah. And because the new vineyard right there, the owner had a nest on his property. And he didn't find it until I got stung 6 times. And then he finally got rid of it. But yeah, so we had a real bad year last year with actually honeybees and yellow jackets. But they're gone now. I haven't seen any yellow jackets this year. So
Real
yeah,
few
ants.
yellow
Yeah,
jackets.
red ants. They're all here. Argentinian ants are here too. But
We just leave them.
yeah,
We leave them. I mean, I know some people sprinkle and kill them.
just don't stand there.
How about rodents?
Those are
Now, generally the ants, as long as you don't get bird damage, they don't come for the fruit. So
Do you have rodents damage? Like gophers and...
yeah, we are constantly after the gophers and the squirrels. Yeah.
and that's where Hank comes in.
Yeah.
We have a ranch dog that he'll actually chase the birds out of the netting if they get in there. He's great. Yeah. He does sometimes bite them through the netting, so that's a little problem.
Terrier breed?
He's a rescue from Baja.
Yeah.
He's a Baja mutt.
About 65 pounds. He's a great dog.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your fertilizer plan or nutrient management plan?
Sure.
Yeah, so we have an injection system, and I converted my sprayer that I spray the vineyard with to inject into the drip system.
Like a fertigation system?
Yeah,
Yeah.
fertigation system. And because I'd used like Dosatron and a Venturi and that kind of stuff, and it just took too long. And so now I just pump it in. It takes 5 minutes to pump it in, and it disperses over the next 4 or 5 hours, however long I water it in. And it makes it my time easier. And so we do some nitrogen injections. We use crop production services. They test our soil and our petioles. And give us tell us what we need to put in for the nutrients, micronutrients, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And we inject the Savanto into the drip system as well.
What's your rootstock? You mentioned.
These are all 1103P, 1103 Paulson. Yeah. Seems to be a pretty good drought tolerant rootstock. It'll recover if it's underwatered, and it's pretty vigorous, but the grapes that we're growing aren't super vigorous. I would never put Syrah on 1103P. I would put it on a low vigor like Freedom or 10114 because Syrah is the most vigorous vine out there, and you need a low vigor rootstock for it. So,
You ever find a variability in here in terms of watering?
yeah, we have a little vein of clay that runs through the middle of the vineyard, and you'll see some variations because of the soil
We have
profile.
rocks.
Rocks is huge, yeah.
Rocks,
There's
clay.
hard pan here too at about 30 inches, and so the vines struggle a little bit till they get through it. We broke it up as much as we could, but it's still there. And then we do have, I'm trying to figure out, we have something going on in the middle of this lower part of the vineyard. There's some myoporum growing there, and all the vines right there in that area are starting to die. So I don't know if the myoporum is doing something to the soil, or I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out right now. So we'll be tearing all that out. So,
When's the best time to test your soil for nutrients?
you can really test it any time, but your crop production services tells us when we should inject and what stage of the growth. Generally, you want to do a fertilization at bud break, and then usually before flower. So they always just tell us when. And
You do fall?
the best thing you can do is after you harvest your grapes is give them some nitrogen, because you want to get your canes as big as possible before they go dormant, because of they shrink, and the bigger your canes are for the next pruning season, the better crop you're going to have the next year. So I always try to grow my grapes as big as I can after harvest. I just water the heck out of them, and I don't turn it off until they go dormant.
Yeah, we keep our grow tubes on because we weed whack. So that's why we still have grow tubes on, even though this vineyard's 10, 11, 12 years old.
Yep.
You said you first planted clover, but did you plant mustard, or is mustard now?
Mustard just showed up.
Mustard's native.
Just show
Well,
up.
it's not
Well,
native.
It's
but-
not native.
It's common.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's everywhere. But it's
The
a good,
missionaries
bees
brought
love
it here.
The
and
bees
it's
love
been
it.
here ever since.
yeah. Bees love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great for
But it
meat
grows
stuff.
without water. So you don't have to water it. It grows between the rows. It does a great job, like Teri said, of breaking up the soil and making it capillary action for the water to get in there. And you just keep it mowed green. It actually adds nutrients back to the soil
It's
as it
edible,
breaks
too.
down. It's great. Yeah.
It's edible, yeah.
Is there other
You can get it
cover
early.
crops that are useful?
Yeah, a lot of people use sweet alyssum and stuff, legumes mostly. But that's stuff that you have to buy and seed and do your tractor and all that stuff. So it's more. I think it's for us. It's more beneficial to let the natives grow.
Ever considered running like an EM sled through here?
A what?
EM sled, Veris mapping, soil mapping that way.
No, there's some stuff. That Vinduino system is working on satellite imaging right now that they can show you they can show you in the middle of the day where your hot spots are in your vineyard, and they can actually show you where you're losing water. And, yeah, it's pretty cool. We monitor our drippers, make sure they're working properly.
Yeah, Mission Irrigation. If you have a vineyard, they do offer a free analysis of your irrigation system. So they'll come out and measure your irrigation system and make sure you're equally applying water across the vineyard. You're not overwatering or underwatering. So there's
map it too.
Yeah,
they'll map it too. Yeah, there's some great resources, and I think that's one of the cool things about today's class is they're going to talk about some of the resources that are available to us.
Right.
I heard you say you were using a imidacloprid. What pest were you using that for?
That is for the glassy winged sharpshooter. Any bug that sucks on the vine, that feeds on the vine, it kills it when it feeds on there. So even if the glassy winged sharpshooter feeds on one vine and it has Pierce's disease, because it's a vector, it'll kill that one vine, but it'll also die. It won't infect the next one to it.
Right.
Or they can fly several miles, so they can go to other vineyards close by. And that's what Savanto does as well, but it's not bad for the bees.
Savanto, do you know what the active ingredient is?
I can look it up for you. Yeah.
So you fertigate with that?
Organic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it more of an oil?
No, it's a pesticide, but it doesn't have the colony collapse effect on the bees.
Yeah.
Is the issue.
They consider that organic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if you're not proactive with the glassy wing sharpshooter, you'll lose your whole vineyard over time. Yeah. I mean, it takes several years. It messes up the xylem and the phloem, and you can't get water to the vine, and you'll see it die. And once you see the effect of it, just pull the vine and plant a new one, because there's no way to save it.
In as proactive?
Yeah, you have to be proactive.
Yeah,
You
more
can't be
proactive.
reactive. Yeah. They do have now. They've designed some vines that are Pierce's disease resistant. I think they're still in trial because they've been making wine from the grapes, and they said it didn't really taste that great. So it's in development, but yeah, and there's other things too. Like they're developing powdery mildew resistant vines and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, the science is working on it, but it's not quite there yet.
So any other questions about, we kind of talked about pest management, water management. Again, when I talk a little bit later about sustainability, there's 16 areas that we're evaluated on, and it's pretty interesting because what I've learned is there's organic, there's biodynamic, thank you, and there's sustainability. And sustainability is by far more encompassing, covers a lot of different things, not just your vineyard. So sustainability is your community relations. We do a lot of volunteer work. We both sit on different boards in the community. Our employee management, our vendor practices. So sustainability is really all encompassing, whereas organic focuses specifically on the vineyard. Yeah. Mockingbird just brought some food over there. Yeah. He had a little bug in his mouth. And biodynamic, I'm just starting to learn about, but our vineyard right over there and our friends Mariah and Andrew right up over the hill are all practicing biodynamic. Really cool stuff. So,
I have one last question.
Yes, please.
On your netting, do you put them up at veraison?
Yeah, we put them up before veraison.
Before? Okay.
Yeah, at or before.
Yeah.
What bricks?
I don't test the bricks. You're just looking for the color change because that's what the birds are looking for. As soon as the color change happens, they start testing the grapes to see if they're sweet, and that's when you get the bird damage. So,
Yeah, so you want to get the nets up before the grapes change color.
yeah. Yeah.
So for us, it's usually beginning of July.
When you talk about sustaining, having, kind of like, I know organic because I work in that area, but does it help the price of the grape?
Well,
the resale?
we're the only certified sustainable vineyard in San Diego County. So the way we're set up is the vineyard is owned by us as sole proprietor. So the winery buys the grapes from the vineyard, but I'm basically buying them for myself, so I'm my only market.
I was just wondering if
So yes, I charge a lot.
Yeah, is it a marketable commodity to put in a lot of these factors? I mean, for avocados, I remember years ago when all of a sudden go organic. You know, instead of 50 cents a pound, it went to $1.25 a pound because you could say organic. And the big thing was I did not use Roundup, you know?
Right.
So it
Yeah.
made the price go up.
Right.
So there's factors that inflate the price. So
Yeah,
change the price.
I don't think San Diego as an ag area has caught on to that yet.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly true in other areas. You know, Sonoma has a goal that 95% of the vineyards in Sonoma will be certified sustainable by a certain year. So I think,
Oregon too.
yeah, Oregon, huge up in Oregon. You know, Salmon Safe
Salmon Safe,
certification.
yeah.
You know, Lodi's got their SIP program. So I think the consumer definitely cares.
Yeah. Oh, of course we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
We do.
So
We
I
know
think-
what's going on.
Yeah, so I think I think it helps us on the pricing of the wine, not yet on the pricing of the grapes.
Okay.
But I can tell you, as you know, as grape buyers, because we buy some of our fruit, we're super picky.
Wait, how much are you willing to pay for grapes?
You know, we're picky. We don't want to buy grapes from a vineyard that's been soaked in Roundup, and so
I think people want to buy local,
Yeah.
so you cut down the amount of diesel or gas it takes to get it to market, and they want minimal intervention. You know, they want clean products.
yeah.
I really like how the powdery mildew about U.S. Davis and temperaturing, because I'm in the pest control business and I teach and train a lot of guys, and it's like, how come we're treating and there's no bugs?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And I see that over and over and over again. So this year I noticed in June it got real hot, and I was on U.S. Davis watching. I only had to treat twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering if I only needed to treat once, but I was like, you know, my foot kept saying, no, I need to do it.
Yeah.
But we only did it twice, because I was watching the heat.
Once you figure out the index, it's really easy to follow, and with the point system and everything, and that literally saves us hundreds of dollars in spray and time and
Yeah, it's a
everything.
time for
Yeah,
me.
and diesel and everything.
Yeah.
And even, you know, driving your tractor through the vineyard compacts the soil. You know, the least amount of times you can do that, the better you are for your soils.
Keeps the birdies around.
Yeah, exactly.
Use the temperature off of a weather station.
We
Or
have
off
actually a
the
temperature sensor in the canopy of the vines that,
Yes.
that tells
So
us.
they don't.
Yeah. And then there's a SDG&E, and Lisa is here.
Yeah.
She sends out a weather report to us on a regular basis because she monitors that SDG&E weather station.
So you use the temperature in the vine
Uh-huh.
as the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
You got that.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Did
Thanks.
you guys plant these vines?
Oh yeah.
No.
When we moved here, our property looked like that.
Yeah.
It was a dirt driveway and a slab poured for the house.
When you planted them, did you put the rootstock in a cage or anything to?
We did not.
Because we were having a problem with gophers or whatever eating ours.
Yeah.
So then we had to go down and reinforce it with caging.
Yeah.
The first
We
vineyard.
have to do that with
yeah.
a fig tree because they love figs.
First vineyard we put in was a small vineyard, and somebody told us drop a beer bottle in each hole, and then shatter it,
Yeah.
and then plant the vine on top of it, and that'll keep the gophers away because of the glass.
Did that work?
We did. You had to drink one per thing though, so it took it was pretty sloppy by the time we were done.